Ito na talaga, for real.
Ito na.
Ito na. Okay, I will share my screen na.
Nasa Spark Notes ba yan?
Spark Notes.
So, do you start, Ning? What's the order again?
You start.
So you, me, Anina.
Yeah, so Larry, Ning, Fabian, Exie, Dre.
Okay.
Can you see?
When one has lived a long time alone.
Yeah, para lang sa'yo yan, Exie.
So
yan?
this is a poem by Galway, Kinnell. I had heard it years ago. And when Ning started reading poems and sharing poems, and I heard Exie had done it, and Dre had also started doing it. Took me a while to figure out which poem I wanted to share. I thought of this maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and I haven't read it since. So it might be completely horrible. It might be completely inappropriate. But I do remember it fondly. So to return to this blindly in a time when many of us are living a long time alone with our thoughts, even if when we're with other people. I feel like the lockdown actually allows us to live with our thoughts. And I don't know, I just feel like it's allowing us to encounter a kind of solitude that I think our super busy world has prevented us from having for years now. And I think that's why I'm a bit terrorized by the possibility of it, because it opens the chance that I will have to hear myself again.
All right.
When one has lived a long time alone, when one has lived a long time alone, one refrains from swatting the fly and lets him go. And one hesitates to strike the mosquito, though more than willing go slap the flesh under her. And one lifts the toad from the pit too deep for him to hop out of and carries him to the grass without minding the toxic urine he slicks his body with. And one envelops in a towel the swift who fell down the chimney and knocks herself against the window glass and releases her outside and watches her fly free, a lifeline flung at reality when one has lived a long time alone.
When one has lived a long time alone, one grabs the snake behind the head and holds him until he stops trying to stick the orange tongue, which splits at the end into two black filaments and jumps out like a fire eater's belches, and has little in common with a pimpled pink lump that shapes sounds and sleeps inside the human mouth into one's flesh, and clamps it between his jaws, letting the gaudy tips show, as children do when concentrating, and as very likely one down oneself without knowing it when one has lived a long time alone.
When one has lived a long time alone, among regrets so immense, the past occupies nearly all the room there is in consciousness. One notices in the snake's eyes, which look back without paying less attention to the future. The first coating of the opaque milky blue leucoma snakes to get when about to throw their skins and become new, meanwhile continuing, of course, to grow old. The exact blue passé that discolors the corneas of the blue-eyed when they lie back at last and look for heaven. A blurring one can see means they will never find it when one has lived a long time alone.
When one has lived a long time alone, one holds the snake near a loudspeaker, disgorging gorgeous sound, and watches him crook his forepart into 4 right angles, as though trying to slow down the music flowing through him in order to absorb it the milk of paradise into the flesh, and now a glimmering appears at his mouth, such a drop of intense fluid as, among humans, could form after long exiting at the tip of the penis. And as he straightens himself out, he has the pathos one finds in the penis when one has loved a long time alone.
When one has lived a long time alone, one can fall to poring upon a creature, contrasting its eternity's face to one's own, full of hours, taking note of each difference, exaggerating it, making it everything, until the other is utterly other, and then, with hard effort, possibly with tongue sticking out, going back over each one once again and canceling it, seeing nothing now but lightness until half an hour later one starts awake, taken aback at how eagerly one swoons into the happiness of kinship when one has lived a long time alone.
When one has lived a long time alone and listens at morning to mourning doves sound their Kyrie eleison, or the small thing spiritualizing onto one's shoulder cry, Pewit Phoebe, or Peabody sparrows at midday send schoolboys whistlings across the field, or at dusk, undamped, unforgiving clinks as from stonemasons' chisels, or on trees' backs, tree frogs scratch the thighs, need fire awake, or from the frog pond, pond frogs raise their ave verum corpus, listens to those who hop or fly, call down upon us the mercy of other tongues. One hears them as inner voices when one has lived a long time alone.
When one has lived a long time alone, one knows only consciousness consummates. And as the conscious one among these others, uttering compulsory cries of being here, the least flycatcher witching up Quebec, or red-headed woodpecker clanging out his music from a metal drain pipe, or ruffled grouse drumming thump, 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 ruff. Wow, I really got this one. Rup, 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 through the trees, all of them in times unfolding, trying to cry themselves into self-knowing. One knows one is here to hear them into shining when one has lived a long time alone.
When one has loved a long time alone, one likes alike the pig, who brooks no deferment of gratification, and the porcupine or thorned pig, who enters the cellar but not the house itself, because of eating down the cellar stairs on the way up, and one likes the worm, who by bunching herself together and expanding rubs her way through the ground, no less than the butterfly, who totters full of worry among the daylilies as they darken. And more one finds one likes any other species better than one's own, which
Mm.
has gone amok, making one self-estranged when one has lived a long time alone.
I love this part. Yeah.
When one has lived a long time alone, sour, misanthropic, one fits to one's defiance the satanic boast. It is better to reign in hell than to submit on earth, and forgets one's kind, as does the snake, who has stopped trying to escape and moves at ease across one's body, slumping into its contours, adopting its temperature, and abandons hope of the sweetness of friendship or love. Before long, can barely remember what they are. and covets the stillness in organic matter. In a self-dissolution, one may not know how to halt when one has lived a long time alone.
When one has loved a long time alone, and the hermit thrush calls and there is an answer, and the bullfrog, head half out of water, remembers the exact sexual cantillations of his first spring, and the snake slides over the threshold and disappears among the stones, one sees they all live to mate with their kind, and one knows, after a long time of solitude, after the many steps taken away from one's kind toward the kingdom of strangers, the hard prayer inside one's own singing is to come back, if one can, to one's own, a world almost lost in the exile that deepens when one has lived a long time alone.
When one has lived a long time alone, one wants to live again among men and women, to return to that place where one's ties with the human broke, where the disquiet of death and now also of history glimmers its firelight on faces, where the gaze of the new baby looks past the gaze of the great granny, and where lovers speak on lips blousy from kissing, that language the same in each mouth. And like birds at daybreak, blether the song that is both earth's and heaven's, until the sun has risen, and they stand in the light of being united, kingdom come, when one has lived a long time alone.
Okay.
Yay! Clap.
I think we actually were not live anymore. Oh,